You know that the Dorfman Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is a part of the School of Management. And one of our sister centers is CERF, the California Economic Research Forecast. And they did a study last year where they estimated the GDP of the Latino community in the United States. And I can never remember the number, and that's where I turn to Gerhard and ask, what was the number for the GDP?
I should know, and I probably have the report somewhere here. Thank you for putting me on the spot. Let me see. Let me give you a good number. A good number to remember is if the Latino economy in the United States were its own sovereign country, it would be the 8th largest economy in the world, ahead of countries such as Brazil, for instance. And very soon, it'll move up to the 7th spot. The recovery of the US economy that we have seen just before the pandemic would not have been possible without the Latino population. All the increases in consumption, all the advances in the real estate market, home purchases, all of that was the Latino cohort in the United States. So we'd be screwed without the Latino population. Let's put it this way.
Thank you. That actually was the statistic I was looking for, Gerhard. Thank you. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. This country is exceptionally dependent upon the Latino community. Dependent's the wrong word. It's an integral part of our economy, which puzzles me why we don't see more Latino entrepreneurs. I think they're there. And we need to encourage them and cultivate them. And this is something that Jesse is doing through the Latino Business Alliance. I'm sure he's going to tell us about that, and also about his interesting story about how he got to where he is. He's one of the few people to have moved from Texas to California. Right there, you can tell there's something about him that's special. So Jesse, over to you. I'm looking forward to hearing your talk.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike and Gerhard and Kristen and Susan and all of Cal Lutheran for having me this afternoon. I was really looking forward to this, and I'm excited about the work that Cal Lutheran is doing, the work they're doing around HSIs and how they're supporting the Latino community. And so I feel very honored, and it's a privilege to speak to everyone here, and look forward to meeting some of you in person as soon as things get better. So just a little background. So I've been hibernating in San Francisco since the lockdown. So looking forward to doors reopening and being able to engage with people in person again. And so that was my superpower, being able to meet people in person and connect people, to other people and also resources. But my journey really begins in Houston. And so both of my parents came over from Mexico. My mom had a 2nd grade education, my dad a high school. So for us at a very early age, education was very important. And so with that, I attended Houston Public Schools. That led to me attending Texas A&M, obtaining a degree in engineering, mechanical, and all that was really inspired by my mentors that I had along the path. And so very blessed and fortunate to have those key mentors in my journey, which are very relevant today, and even much more important when we think about pathways and career pathways for Latinos. And so, I never had any intentions to live in California, never even thought about it, never crossed my mind. And as I was going from A&M to work in my first job as a project manager in a small conveying company, and being there for a couple of years, really learning all aspects of a small business, which was really very rewarding and very just being able to do a little bit of everything. I just found that very fascinating, which really led to building skill sets over the years that I still use today. With that, then I started getting interested in computer networking. And with computer networking, I ended up working for Cabletron Systems, which is a big competitor of Cisco Systems back in the day. We were at one point $1 billion company. So I was designing networks and also doing presentations and pricing for Texas, the desert Southwest, and Mexico. And so the only reason I got that job, because I actually faxed in my resume which you'll hear another story along those same lines, is because I spoke Spanish. So I was bilingual. And so that was the key reason that I got the call, interviewed, and ended up moving to Dallas. And so I was supporting the salespeople. And, one of the things that I realized while doing that job is that I was doing all the work for the salespeople. I was creating proposals. I was doing the pricing. I was there late nights. I was a guy there on the weekends. And I was like, well, why are the salespeople, why are they the only ones going to happy hours or going and playing golf and, having these commission checks? And so eventually, had an opportunity to move, and I got promoted within a year to outside sales. So leveraging my technical skills along with sales to be able to move to Scottsdale, Arizona. So I was in Scottsdale, Arizona for about a year and a half. And then one day I was at Barnes and Noble reading the paper over the weekend when we still had bookstores. And I came across a classified ad that said internet sales for internet company. So this was 1996. And so again, I faxed in my resume, got a call back, interviewed. They flew me out to San Jose, and the startup was actually based in Sunnyvale. And we were one of two pioneers in the web hosting services space. So this was before Rackspace, before AWS, where we actually had to buy physical servers and install them in a data center. And so we were hosting Yahoo, Netscape, and some other marquee brands. So I became employee 27. We were a startup funded by Sequoia Capital. And in less than a year, we went from a startup to part of a public company via 2 acquisitions, trading at $35 a share. So that was my intro into the world of tech, startups, Silicon Valley, and stock options. And so the ongoing joke used to be that, hey, they don't teach us about stock options in Texas. And so with that, an amazing ride, met some amazing people, surrounded by all these thought leaders that were working at startups in the early days, look smart, excite at home, et cetera, et cetera. And so with that, what I like to say is I caught the startup bug. And so in 98, at the fall of 98, I resigned and decided to pursue my own startup. And I did that with my brother. And we launched one of the first Latino portals focused on the U.S. Hispanic community called Picosito.com. And so, we raised about 2.3 million seed capital. In less than 6 months, we had an offer from a competitor for about 4 million to be acquired. And what we did is we decided to wait because that competitor had just gone public and raised about 50 million on the market. And we're like, well, if they did it, we can do it. And so just and believe and right that we had a better value proposition for our Hispanic consumer here in the U.S. And we were also bilingual, which really made us different. So we were serving content in English and Spanish, which is something that would still be very relevant today. With that, right before the .com bust, we were entertaining another offer between $8 and $10 million from a Spanish media company. And unfortunately, we didn't close that in time. And so what I tell people is that, although I didn't earn an MBA with a piece of paper, I earned it by doing my first startup. And so unfortunately, we held on till December 2000. As we all know, the capital markets didn't recover. And so we were unable to raise money. From that, I ended up going into corporate America for a few years. And then I finally got out of corporate America, did my own consulting company in 2008 through 2010. And then from 2010, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do a second startup. What's available for us as far as resources. So it was the early days of community-based organizations providing services to their founders, the early days of Black founders, Jewish founders, and others. So I did a few searches on Google. I'm Latino, I'm in tech, I'm a founder. Let me see what's available for us. Couldn't find anything. And so that became the beginning of Latino Startup Alliance. And so Latino Startup Alliance is our nonprofit focused on empowering Latino tech founders. Most recently, in fall of last year, we changed our name to Latinx Startup Alliance for pride, to be more inclusive and supportive of all founders. And so we're really excited about that name change. And so this month, we're actually completing 10 years of being around. And so we're looking forward to the next 10 years and seeing what we're able to do and who we're going to be able to support as a Latino founder. So out of a personal need that I had, as a startup founder, and not being able to find the resources of the support, we launched this nonprofit. And little did we know that through this nonprofit and the work that we were doing, that it would take me to the White House 4 times under tech inclusion. It took me to the Clinton Global Initiative twice. And then I was at the UN twice in 2019. And I would say the biggest honor and the blessing I received in 2020 was being able to attend Davos as a 2020 delegate. And so that was a real eye-opener and also an incredible experience, life-changing, and being able to participate, talk to a number of, key leaders from around the world and really represent, as a Latino, this first U.S. Hispanic delegation, which was led by We Were All Human and the Hispanic Star under the leadership of Claudia Romo Edelman. And so, so with that, it was being life-changing. Also, you think about, well, what else can you do, right? And so how do we get more Latinos to be at Davos as we think about the future? And so that's part of my new mission, is ensuring that we have representation and that we have a voice in these different venues, and especially these world events where we have that seat at the table. Currently, I wrapped up startup number 4 in 2020, which was called Career Force. And so that was focused on workforce development into the Salesforce ecosystem. I was the first entrepreneur resident entering the Salesforce incubator in fall of 2016. And so what we were doing is helping diverse communities become certified as a Salesforce admin so that they could find a career path into tech. And because of the Salesforce ecosystem, the global one, it allows for many opportunities to enter, at an entry-level position and then grow your way into other opportunities. And the beauty about that is that as the ecosystem grows, as you become more proficient as an admin, you're able to advance into a higher level position. And so what we see in the ecosystem is we see all these admins going on to that next level, which therefore creates another opportunity for an entry-level position to be available. And so with that led me to my day job, which I'm now at Anuba Solutions. And so Anuba Solutions is providing Salesforce solutions and development. We're about a team of 20. We're headquartered here in Northern California. And then we have a team of about 10 plus in Quito, Ecuador. And so we're mostly a Latino team, which has been really amazing. And so with that, we will continue to grow the team in Quito. We will also double down and grow the team in Mexico. And then we're looking for additional expansion into Houston, the Seattle area, and also Miami. And so, how do we create more opportunities? How do we create more pathways for Latinos and other diverse individuals into the Salesforce ecosystem? And if you're not familiar with the Salesforce ecosystem, they call it the Ohana. And so you have this Ohana culture where everyone is supportive and embracing. And so when you think about, the resources that are available and the support, it's truly magical. But let me take a step back and talk about Latinx Startup Alliance. And so one of the things that we've done, or many things that we've done over the years, is really, one, creating awareness, right? Creating the awareness around what is tech, what does it mean, what are the opportunities around it, and being able to connect people together, especially founders, right? Because the journey of a founder can be a lonely one. The next thing is really the access. So how do we provide access to our Latinx founders? And so we do that through partnerships. So we do that through Facebook, TechCrunch, Crunchbase, and others, and being able to offer our community access via tickets, also pitching opportunities, as well as articles, and then just other resources that a founder may need, like it could be pitch deck guidance, et cetera, in their tech entrepreneurship journey. And then the last one is really acceleration. So acceleration is, how do you take this early stage startup, this early stage founder, and help them with mentorship, with intros, especially warm intros to angel investors and VCs, and help them in developing the pitch skills and also the guidance necessary to really help them build their startup and introduce them into the ecosystems that they need to be a part of. And so how do they find their tribe? And then also how do they find and leverage the resources that they have around them? Most recently, given all my work since 2011 with the Latinx Startup Alliance and all the advising that I've done over the years with founders, is being able to become an advisor. And that led to me becoming a venture partner at Republic most recently, and then also a venture partner at Vamos Ventures. And so Vamos Ventures is a new fund. It's about a $45 million fund focused on early stage diverse founders with a focus on Latinx. And so we're just closing out that fund. And so you'll see more about Vamos here in the near future. And so Marcos Gonzalez, who's the founder and managing partner for Vamos Ventures, embarked on this journey probably a few years ago. And so it's been an amazing thing to see him go from, hey, I have this thought, this idea, and how I want to support Latino founders, to finally executing and being able to deliver on his vision. And then in addition, they just launched their first Scout program. And so when you think about being a Scout in venture, Vamos Ventures has about 12 that they recruited. They probably had 100 plus applications for this first cohort. And so that's really what I look at as far as the next step in my career evolution is, how do we get more Latinx founders funded? And then, being able to provide them access to capital. And then how do we get more Latinos into venture capital as well, whether it's an internship, a fellowship, a scout, a venture partner, and ultimately the ability to raise their own fund. And so, as we know, the numbers are very small when you think about diverse fund leaders, and especially when you think about Latinos, and then more importantly, when you think about Latina-led funds. And so now when we think about, what else do we do, in this version 2 is, better supporting our founders, because there's just more resources. And so that's a big change from, 2011 is you have more accelerators, you have more funds, you have more micro funds, you have access to people, which is, come a long way. I've been spending a lot of time on Clubhouse. And so the ability to access people from around the world and have conversations has really been eye-opening. And just, it's an amazing platform if you haven't been a part of it. And so you can find us there on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific under Latinx Investing and Tech. And so we'll cover tech news, we'll cover investing, and then eventually we'll get to a point where we can actually have people pitching on Clubhouse. Now, ideally, we'll be back in person soon, and so hopefully by fall, we'll have these in-person events, which again foster so many different things, especially when you think about building relationships and establishing rapport. And then, when I think about the people that are with us this evening, I think there's a number of lessons. There's so many lessons along the way, and the biggest ones are ensuring that you show up, right? And so a lot of people do want to help. A lot of people do want to provide support. And so how do you show up? How do you engage? And then how do you build those relationships with people? And you don't always have to ask for capital day one. You can ask for advice. And so being able to ask for advice on what you're working on, get some feedback, give you an opportunity to iterate and see how they can help you in the future. There's been a number of relationships that have come full circle. We're talking from like 2013 as occurred most recently. And so, make sure you don't burn any bridges. Make sure that, you're very friendly and supportive, and that remember that you never know who you will cross paths with again in your future self. And then, because some of the other lessons is just believe in yourself, believe in the work that you're doing. Because if you believe, others will believe. Make sure that you're always paying it forward. And so how do you give back? how can you help others? How can you be of service to others? And then also think about how you can mentor others. How can you be an advisor? How can you be a champion? How can you be a sponsor? And if someone doesn't know, then help them, right? Help them through through conversations, through books, through some of the resources that are online, and helping them with something that they don't know. And then, for the new entrepreneurs, be able to ask for advice and also ask questions, right? And I think the biggest takeaway with all the entrepreneurs that I've worked with is just it's okay to fail. And I think Mike would agree, along with Jose, it's okay to fail, and it's okay, to fail in some of the work that you're doing, but make sure that you take the lessons learned from that failure and apply it to whatever else you're working on next. And then I just want to see if there's any questions.
It looks like there are a few. Starting with, did you have a mentor in your early days?
And I'll interject. That's from me.
Okay.
Hey, Jesse.
Hi, Kristen.
Thank you so much for all of that. So I'm conscious of the fact that there's a lot of students on the call today. And so if any of them are wondering how to even start, thinking that they might need a mentor, that might be a good place to start and support them in their entrepreneurial journeys, and any advice you might have for that process.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you, Kristen. And, when we think about mentorship, there's different types, right? And some can be short-term, some can be long-term, right? Some can be lifelong. And so think about, what is it that you need help with, right? And then think about the people that you have relationships with and those that you don't. And then how do you find them? From a startup perspective, it's, I think the first step is just finding your tribe. Who's doing similar work, right? Who's in that ecosystem so that you can learn from them, you can learn from one another. And then being able to find those that have succeeded in a similar space so that you can learn from them as well and ask them for guidance and support. And, before pandemic, it was easy to have that coffee ask, right? Let's go grab coffee. And so now we've had to rely on virtual, but, hopefully soon we'll be able to have those same experiences again, where you're able to ask people for coffee. When I think about my mentors, family, it was counselors, it was church, it was Boy Scouts, right? Starting early. And then you think about college, right? Who are the various mentors during college? Then after college, right? Who are your peers, work peers? Who are, who's your boss or bosses, et cetera. And then, post-college, when you think about that first job and, who can be your mentors there. I think if I look back, it's always in that moment, right, that you identify who you are, what you want to learn, and maybe what direction you're going. So we do those 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year plans. I don't know if people still do those anymore. And so we would do those. And so thinking about that and then lining up, career and then life journey, and how do those match up, right? And then what are the milestones that you want to hit for each one?
So you okay with taking some more questions, Jesse? Because I'm scrolling through the chat and I wasn't paying attention. I realized there's some interesting going on among people.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer questions.
So you mentioned with the new venture that you have a location in Quito.
Correct.
In Ecuador. We have a person on the call who's part Ecuadorian, I believe, and Cal Lutheran has some connections in Ecuador. What is it about Ecuador what's going on there that there's all of this activity with software and tech?
Yeah. Well, I have to say that, there's a personal connection to Ecuador because one of the founders for Nuba Solutions, Jenny, she's Ecuadorian. And so that was the family and also the personal connection to the city and also the country. And so that led to the, when you think about where do you expand and, who do you know and what do you know, it made the best sense. And along with what some of the things you mentioned, what are some of the things that are occurring in the local economy that could be leveraged, right, for growth. And so when we think about some of the countries in Latin, what's taking place and which ones have been ahead of the curve and which ones have been a little bit slower for adoption. And so today we're actually thinking about implementing a center of excellence in Quito. And so being able to train people not only in Salesforce, but other tech skills so that we can better support the youth and provide them on a pathway to a career in tech.
Interesting, because it's a little country, right? It's
Yeah, I've never been. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't been yet, but definitely plan on going after the pandemic here.
Yeah, it's on my list for sure. We had a question from our communications firm that pitched at the beginning, and I'm gonna paraphrase this a little bit because it's a common question we get. If you're a service provider and you want to work with startups, it's a difficult segment to sell into because early stage startups generally don't have money to pay fees. So how do you engage startups if you're a service provider in a way that gets them some value but doesn't they can't afford to pay you?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and thanks, Alex. I think you have to think about your business, right, as a communications firm, and where do you want to play with respect to the landscape, and so are you helping early stage, mid stage, or late stage startups, right? Are you working with seed funded or Series A? So what are those? What are those areas that will be most conducive to your business? And then if you do enjoy working with early stage startups, say pre-seed, then maybe you take on 1 or 2 per year as a way to support them in the work that they're doing, with the hope that they will raise that next round of funding, and then therefore they will be able to pay for your services. There's a number of different strategies and there's a number of different types of startups, and so it really depends on the time, what people are willing to pay, the value of your service, and then also the network, right? Who can get you into TechCrunch? Who can get you into another publication like Forbes or Entrepreneur? And then I would say that given the startups that we've worked on over the years, we've been very blessed in being able to get just organic PR. And so being able to, tell our story and be approached to being able to, share with the work that we're doing. So my second startup was a Groupon like venture focused on the Latino community. So it was all in Spanish. So our value prop was, hey, people are saving money through Groupon. Shouldn't Latinos be able to save money too, but in Spanish? And so we had a good run. Unfortunately, I think there's a question around failure. Unfortunately, given the market dynamics that Groupon put into the market, because they declined that offer from Google for about $6 billion to be acquired, then they decided they wanted to go the path of IPO. And I don't know if anyone remembers, but their financials were scrutinized. And so that led to a lot of negative conversations about our business because, there was this whole question around Groupon and their financials. And so unfortunately, we had to pivot. And so that pivot led to a new startup, our third startup, which was called Relevance. And so Relevance was focused on contextual media advertising for video. And that was really exciting because what we were doing is we were taking the text stream of the conversations, running through our algorithms, and then we're mashing it with advertisers. So if you were talking in your video and you were saying, hey, I'm going to go let's go grab a cup of coffee, you would pick up that word coffee, and then coffee would be paired with our index of advertisers. And you could put in Starbucks, Pete's, etc. And so due to some some unfortunate family matters, we had to stop that journey. But that journey took me to Brazil. So we were part of Startup Brazil. And I spent about 3 months on the ground in Brazil. And we were working with, the top entertainment company, Global, to do a proof of concept. And so that was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
I hear that about Brazil a lot.
Yeah. I plan to go back. So.
Let's talk about failure a little bit more. What was your biggest failure?
That's a great question. And, when you think back of, probably startup number one, you think about time into marketing, you think you're moving fast enough. And, even though we had 2 acquisition offers and we turned one down, one, we didn't know that the .com was going to have a bust, right? But had we moved it just a little bit quicker, even a month time frame would have made the difference. And perhaps having that acquisition, that second one under our belt. And so I think when you think about the work that you're doing and, how do you really accelerate within reason on your mission, right? And what you're building. And so because it was our first startup, I would say the landscape was probably frothy, and so we probably didn't move as fast as we should have if we think back about, that time. And so really now it's been about that lesson learned is just, move as quickly as you can because you don't know what tomorrow may bring. And tomorrow may be positive or it may be negative, but how do you make sure you're doing what you're doing and achieving what you can in the moment?
So if as you have questions, you can either type them in the chat box or raise your hand either the old-fashioned way or in Zoom. In Zoom, if you click on reactions, then raise hand, then we can see your hand raised. Russ.
Yeah, wanted to comment to Jesse. I think that time is of the essence thing that you two were just talking about is really something to keep in mind because you never know the future. And the other thing I'd like to reinforce comments you made for students and young entrepreneurs, Jesse. One is that you never know who you're going to cross paths with. Right. You just never, ever know. And I had a personal experience when I was 36 and this young man was 25 and he's working for me and he's smart. I thought, well, this guy's really talented, but who would know from that instance that he would wind up for the last couple of decades managing Bill Gates's money? I mean, how would you know that at age 25? He's very bright. Yeah, right. But so the lesson is treat everyone with respect. And engage with everyone in a sincere and helpful manner, and the rest of it will take care of itself because you can't pick them out. I just knew he was really bright, but how could I have known that outcome? You can't. Right. So
no, thank you, Russ. Appreciate that.
Well, it's not the destination; it's the journey, right?
Right.
We all seem to end up in places we didn't expect. Most of us, some of us know exactly what we want to do and go do it, but we had one speaker earlier this season that we talked about failure, and the way they looked at failure was not as a failure, but as one way to not do it and feedback for the next venture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just continue to learn from the past, right? Especially from your mistakes. And how do you apply those lessons learned to that new venture? And so, so being a 4-time founder, and that's like official. I haven't talked about the other ideas that I put on paper and dabbled a little bit, and then for whatever reason, nothing came out about it. And so there's quite a few of those. So they just didn't get the the green light to move forward.
Any more questions? I can't see everybody's hand. Arnold Gutierrez.
Hi, Jesse. I live in San Jose, so we're in the same neighborhood.
Good to meet you, Arnold.
One of the strange things I've noticed is almost every Latino that I know up here that is, a fairly, recent immigrant, very entrepreneurial, gardening services, housekeeping services, food service, almost any service, they're in the business.
Right.
And yet their desire for their children is to become professional. And once their kids become professional, they are no longer entrepreneurial. And I'm just wondering, this disconnect, right? Is it that the money becomes too good once you're a professional where it isn't? That's what drives you. What's the disconnect? What is it that maybe the second or third generation Latino needs to hold on to so that we do have that drive to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot over the years, and it's not only the professional but also students. And so when you think about students and they go off to school, where are they studying? So some are studying for those traditional careers, right? Engineer, lawyer, doctor, and then you have others that are studying nonprofit, some type of other service, right? And supporting social impact. And so you don't have a lot that are studying towards, taking entrepreneurship courses per se, right? And so how do we create more awareness around that? But I would say the two key words are like risk adverse, and that covers many of those buckets, right? So from an investor perspective to career to entrepreneur. And so my opinion in these conversations has been that Latinos are just less risk adverse. And so because we don't take as many chances, I would say, in some of the things that that we've been talking about. And then there's also the cultural piece, right? When we think about families, do you have the family support, right? Do you have the stability as well? So when you think about, a lot of us having like side hustles in addition to, our main job, right? We just don't have the capital to support us, right? We don't have the friends and family that can write those 25K or more checks. And so there's a number of barriers, right? And then also having the ability to see like others, how many, successful Latino entrepreneurs or founders, are in your network, in your circle. How many do you meet, as you're going about, your day-to-day activities. And so you need that constant reinforcement. You need to see like others, right, in your day-to-day path. And so how do we create that? We do that through speaking engagements, right? We do that through educating others more, downstream, right? So in the K through 12, what are some entrepreneurship courses that can be introduced? You have that program called Build that works with high schools and having them learn about entrepreneurship. And then we don't have enough technical founders as well. And so that's another big challenge. And so how do we create more technical founders in the ecosystem? And then the last piece is really the comfort level. Like you said, you have that professional job and you're making great money. And so how do you walk away from that? so it's very hard to walk away from that way of living in that comfort level. And then family, right? You think about, who's having more kids as well. And you think about Latinos. And so being able to provide for your family, and not only your, your immediate family, but also your, it could be your siblings, it could be your mom and dad. There's just so much.
You mentioned Jesse, and then we'll get to you next, Alex. Actually, Alex, go ahead. I'll table mine.
So Jesse, I'm curious, are there any organizations in Los Angeles for entrepreneurs, for Latino entrepreneurs in Los Angeles, tech startups out here?
I don't know of any official ones. There was one working at an indie desk. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, I just spoke to Andy this morning.
Yep, and so I know they had launched Exceleta a few years ago, and then I think it went quiet for a little bit, and maybe they're coming back around. I'm not sure what they're planning to do, but I know they were doing so. I know they got into procuring capital, right, in order to fund just businesses in general. I don't know if you mentioned anything on the tech entrepreneurship piece.
I'll definitely check. I mean, I'll sign him about a particular print job. They have a printing company in printing, and so we're talking about that. But I'll definitely ask him about his tech startup. Yeah,
so I spent a lot of time there. You'll see our banner in the space if you have a chance to visit.
Okay.
There on 3rd Street, and so there's different ones that have come and gone over the years. You have an incubator in Chicago that focuses on Latinx founders. I think there's one in Boston as well. The ones in LA are more diverse, I would say. And then you have the new activity that's taking place in Miami because of the mayor, right? And also SoftBank has that $100 million fund that's been allocated to Miami startups. And then when we think about my hometown, Houston, there's a new co-working space called the Ion. That's about 300,000 square feet. That's going to support, innovation, tech, and startups. And so we'll be going back to Houston to help support that local ecosystem and really establish that foundation for Houston and also for the state of Texas, and ensuring that we have more Latinx founders coming from Texas.
Do you think that the Latino Startup Alliance over time will expand and have chapters and programs?
Yes, we've actually gone down that path early on, and actually Jose was one of our first chapter leaders for Santa Maria. And so, the lesson learned from that when we think about expansion and being able to support our mission in other cities and states is that the first ones that raised their hand were founders. Oh yeah, let me help you run that. But then as a founder, you get busy with your own company. and so now it's really about, okay, we would have to hire full-time staff that are non-founders in order to help support that local ecosystem.
Yeah, it's you always hear that entrepreneurs are at the heart of a startup community, but it's very hard to find any that have the time to be leaders. We have time for another question or two. I've got another one. You mentioned Republic and that you were a venture partner there. Republic is one of the leading equity crowdfunding apps, where instead of raising a lot of money from an institution, you raise a little bit of money from a lot of people. Do you think that equity crowdfunding is a viable alternative for startups that struggle to raise money from venture capitalists who forget about getting the door open? They're not even sure where the door is. Do you see equity crowdfunding growing in influence?
Yeah, Mike, thank you for bringing up that question. And, it's an important one because I think, a couple of things that are most important as a founder, right, is to understand your business and then understand what type of capital makes sense for your for your business, right? And so with respect to the crowdfunding, and especially for equity, we've been a Republic partner since 2016, before the platform was even launched. And so we were out there evangelizing and talking about crowdfunding, what it was, and how it could help support startup founders and helping them raise up to $1 million. The exciting thing is that legislation from last year just went into effect. So now you can raise up to $5 million under a crowdfunding platform such as Republic or WeFunder. And so, what type of money is the right type of money for you, right? And not every business, which is a common conversation, is not every business is venture backable as well. And so what we try to do is really educate our founders and who they are, what they're working on, what are like companies in their space, so that they can at least have some type of gauge on where they are, and then also where they are in their timeline. And so I encourage a lot of founders to do that market research and do a deep dive, and find out for themselves, right? Like what is comparable, what is similar out there in the market space, what was their journey like, and it's never apples to apples. And there's always, you always hear about the good stories in the press. You never hear about the bad stories or the failures for the most part. And so, there's just so much noise out there at times. And so I think we just need to do a better job of just educating our founders and having them, assess who they are, what they're working on, and then also what do they want to build, right? What are they building long term? And then you get into those conversations about, is it a $100 million company, right? Does it have that potential? Is it a lifestyle business? The old analogies, are you an aspirin? Are you, painkiller? And so, or vitamin. And so and those are just being able to spend time with the founder and really get to know who they are and understand, what they're working on and then what their vision is. But I think crowdfunding is an excellent opportunity to leverage capital that's out there in the market. And depending on your business, does it make sense to turn some of your partners, network, as well as customers into investors into your business? And so you can see, if you go to republic.co and look at some of the companies that have been funded, you can do a quick cursory look on which ones have appealed to the community as a whole and others that haven't. And so there's never a guarantee, but at least knowing like where you might fall, right? And then also what might be comparable. But there's been, 4 or 5 Latino companies that have raised on Republic that hit that $1 million mark. And then this year, I think there's only been a couple of ventures that have hit that 5 million to date. And so that's been Arlen Hamilton from Backstage, and then Gumroad, which is down in your area, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that one raised quick.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so I would encourage, the entrepreneurs and the founders to explore crowdfunding, to learn much about it, and just see if it's a way for you to raise capital, and think about it as pre-seed or seed capital in order to get you to that next set of milestones. And so how do you build that traction, right? That magic word traction, to help you get to that next level of fundraising so that you can raise that Series A.
Yeah, no, definitely. The link is in the chat box. I'm on Republic as an investor. I'm very enthusiastic about the platform and about WeFunder and Start Engine, all of them that are an alternate source of capital for founders who have trouble getting in the door with VCs, and that's a lot of them. Even if you're white and male, chances are, and you're an entrepreneur, chances are you'll never see the boardroom of a venture capitalist. But I'd encourage you to take a look and get a feel for how it works. And you can anybody can invest on Republic. There are no special requirements, and the minimum investment usually starts at $100. And I feel like I'm doing a Republic commercial. And I didn't really mean to do that. So I think we've maybe got time for one more. Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, we need to send you a hoodie, Mike.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if anyone wants to get in contact with me, just look me up on LinkedIn and send me a message, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions and also help, support you on any venture that you're working on.
Thank you, Jesse. That'd be great. And if you've got a little bit of time, if you wouldn't mind hanging out, if any of the students want to hang out after we end the show, maybe you can ask them a couple of quick questions or.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great contact info. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me put my LinkedIn. I'll put it in the chat.
Well, thank you very much. Oh,
We have one more question.
one more question.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Maybe it's a little bit too broad, but what would you say are your predictions for Latino entrepreneurship in the future? If it's going to change drastically, or in what direction is it going towards?
Well, it's been like this since 2011. And so.
Is that up or that's up, right? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so if we go back to 2011 and look at the numbers and establish that as a baseline to date, right? And you think about, those, so different points, right? So the amount that have been on Republic, WeFunder, right? The number that have gone through YC, 500 startups, Techstars, you have a lot of data points now. Whereas before, it was just a handful. And then you think about the number of diverse and Latinx-led funds, and then also venture partners. You think about the scouts, you think about the interns as well. And so it's all been positive, as well as when you think about just women and Latinas, right? There's a lot of Latino-led funds. And so I have another friend from Vamos that she started Latina venture students out of MIT. And so how do you encourage more Latinas to look at venture as a career opportunity? You have VC Familia, which is led by Cheryl from Republic. And so there's more and more Latinx VC as well. And so you're seeing more and more communities come together and helping to create that, again, that awareness, and then also help build that pipeline.
Excellent. Thank you, Anastasia. Well, let's join me in thanking Jesse. Let's give him some virtual applause. That was wonderful, Jesse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks to everyone that's in the audience. And again, let me put my link in the chat.
So students, Jesse is doing you a solid right here. If you've got your LinkedIn, you should have your LinkedIn profile. You should have your LinkedIn profile when you're a freshman, as far as I'm concerned. Connect to him because he's got an incredible network, and ask questions and use him as a resource because he's a great example of what you can do in your journey. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't even matter where you end up. What matters is what you do along the way.
It's true, Mike. There's no linear path.
Nope.
And the journey's not linear as well. And so
definitely not.
Yeah. And so
thanks very much. Thanks all for another great year of speakers. Thanks for being there for us virtually, and I hope to see you all in person in September.